I tell them it's not a dream. It is the absolute knowledge that your mind is trapped inside a corpse. It wasn't looking at me. It was looking at itself. And then the reflection smiled. It had left my room. We were calling the police, but then we heard it. The unmistakable, slow click of the front door being locked. ... from the inside. It didn't shriek. It commanded, "Sleep." And then it left a mark, a physical, visible bruise on my skin. When I tell people about my sleep paralysis, they always ask if it's the same as a bad dream. They ask if it is scary like a roller coaster. I tell them it is nothing like a dream, and it's nothing like a ride. It is the absolute, irrefutable knowledge that you are awake, that your eyes are open, and that something evil is in the room with you, and your body has ceased to belong to you. Your mind is trapped inside a corpse. That is the horror. That is the truth. This happened to me first when I was 20. I was living alone for the first time in a new apartment in Seattle. It was a beautiful place, top floor, huge windows, a view of the skyline. It felt safe, utterly secure. I had all the modern locks, a Moshi-activated light on the patio, and a heavy, expensive deadbolt on the front door. The only thing you could hear at night was the distant, faint siren of a city in motion, which actually made me feel more secure. Like there was always someone out there, always people watching. This wasn't the deep wards. This was a well-lit, urban center. I was invulnerable, or so I thought. The breach. The waking up the night it started, I went to bed early. I remember being completely exhausted, the kind of deep, dead sleep that follows a stressful week. I put my phone on the charger, turned off the lamp, and was out within minutes. The next thing I registered wasn't a sound, but an absence of sound. The distant city hum was gone. My own breathing was a distant thing, not my own. I woke up, but not normally. It was as if my consciousness had been violently forced back into my body from a great distance. My eyes snapped open, and the apartment was awash in the orange glow of the streetlights outside. Everything was exactly where it should be. The pile of clothes on the chair, the window slightly ajar, to let in the cool night air, the ceiling fan turning lazily above me. And yet, nothing was right. I tried to shift, to turn onto my side. Nothing. It was like I was cemented to the mattress. I blinked, and then I tried to blink again, and that was when the first wave of pure, cold dread washed over me. I couldn't move my head. I couldn't move my fingers. I could feel my chest rise and fall, but it was shallow, almost mechanical. My mind began to race, scrambling for a logical explanation. Cramp. Sleep position. I tried to scream. My throat contracted. A desperate effort, and the only sound that came out was a faint, agonizing hiss sound that was trapped in my windpipe. The presence. The tactile terror. It was at that moment, when the sound didn't come, that I knew I was not alone. It was an instinct, a knowledge that bypassed sight and sound and went straight to the core of my fear. My eyes were fixed on the ceiling, but my peripheral vision, that unreliable, terrified sliver of sight, was tracking something. Something moving near the foot of my bed. The movement was slow, a sickeningly smooth, deliberate slide. It didn't make a sound on the carpet, but the sheer weight of its movement seemed to warp the silence in the room. I felt the pressure on the mattress near my feet. A slight, slow indentation, like a large animal had just hauled itself onto the edge. And then, the smell. It was a stench I have never forgotten and hope to never smell again. Not the smell of garbage or rot, but something ancient wet soil, stale basement air, and something acrid, metallic, like old, dried blood. It smelled like the earth had expelled something that did not belong. I could feel my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. A panicked drum against the weight I now felt slowly begin to crawl up the length of the bed. I tried to thrash, to throw my entire being into a single movement. The effort was useless. I might as well have been a painting on the wall. The only thing I could move were my eyes, which were now locked in a desperate, wide-open stare. I wanted to close them. I begged my eyelids to close. "Don't open your eyes," "Don't look." But they were pinned open, forced to witness. The weight was now near my thighs, and my sheets began to rustle. A soft, sickening noise that was the only sound in the apartment. It was slow, inexorable. I could feel my pajamas, the cotton fabric, stretching and dragging against my skin as it moved. The friction, a terrible, physical contact. The Shadow Man. The ultimate violation. My line of sight was still mostly the ceiling, but as the weight moved up my torso, I saw the shift in the ambient light. A shape began to block the orange street glow, a silhouette against the pale drywall. It was tall, unnaturally long, and hunched. Not human, not animal. Just mass. The next moment, the weight was directly on my chest. It was crushing. It was the heaviest thing I have ever felt. Not a pillow, not a person. It felt like a 50-pound slab of cold marble stone. The breath I had been taking, the shallow, trapped breath, was immediately expelled, and I couldn't draw another. I was drowning on dry land. My lungs were compressed, and the panic of suffocation was immediate and total. I tilted my eyes downward, the absolute limit of my movement. And there it was. It was not the classic Shadow Man of the stories. Not a nice, neat silhouette. Tease was real. It was a dark, viscous blackness, a column of shadow. But it was glistening. It had a skeletal, angular quality to its form. Hunched over me, its head tilted. And I saw the eyes, not glowing, but reflective. There were 2 points of dull, wet yellow that caught the light from the street and seemed to absorb it at the same time. They were focused entirely on my face, and I felt not hatred, but an immense, cold hunger. It began to breathe, a soft, wet, ragged sound, right next to my ear. It was close enough that I could feel the minute, freezing current of air against the skin of my neck. And then, I felt a hand. It wasn't a hand. It was a cluster of long, bony, cold tendrils that wrapped around my arm just above the elbow. The grip was impossibly tight, and the cold was instant, penetrating the skin to the bone. It was not the cold of a winter night. It was the cold of a crypt. The creature leaned in further, and I saw its mouth, a lip, ragged split in its face that stretched too wide, showing something that resembled filed down, wet stone. It opened its mouth completely, a black cavern, and a sound finally came out. Not a shriek, not a whisper. It was a name. Not my name, not a human name. It was a grating, guttural collection of consonants and vowels that vibrated against my eardrum and somehow entered my brain. It was a name that felt like an identity, and the entity had spoken it. The release. The scramble for reality. I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like an hour, but it could have been 10 seconds. My mind had fully detached from reality. I was screaming internally, bargaining with a shadow. I focused every single ounce of my will onto one thing. The little finger on my left hand. Move. 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 A flash of absolute, incandescent white light. A neurological short circuit exploded behind my eyes. And then it was gone. The immense, crushing weight vanished in an instant, replaced by the normal, familiar lightness of my quilt. The cold, wet grip on my arm was gone. The smell of the crypt was replaced by the clean, cool night air. I gasped, a giant, convulsive inhale that felt like my lungs were being ripped open. I was moving. I scrambled off the bed, flying backward until my head hit the wall, kicking the sheets away from me. My body was shaking so violently I couldn't stand. I was sobbing, not from sadness, but from a terror so pure it felt chemical. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't look at the foot of the bed. I sat there, shaking, until the first hint of blue-gray dawn appeared in the window. My apartment, moments ago a pristine, safe haven, was now a hostile cell. When I finally, hesitantly, pulled the sheet back the next morning, my arm was fine. No marks, no bruises. But just above my elbow, exactly where the tendrils had gripped me, the skin was east. And the next night, as I tried to fall asleep, I realized I was listening for the absence of sound, listening for the wet, slow rustle of something sliding up the carpet toward my bed. Because I had been visited, and what came into my safe, locked apartment, what sat on my chest and spoke that horrible name, was not a dream. It was true. This is not a story about the first time. The first time is shock. The second time is the dawning, cold certainty that you have been targeted. This is a story about the 4th month of my sleep paralysis, a period where it had become a terrifying, scheduled appointment. I started scheduling my sleep around it. I would fall asleep exhausted, hoping for an SP-free night, only to wake up at 3:17 a.m. the same time. Every time to the familiar pressure on my neck and the inability to scream. I had learned the rules of my own paralysis. Look at the clock, wait for it to end, focus on a toe. I thought I had it mastered. Primera, ajua, ese wrong. The entity, whatever it was evolving. The episode started like all the others. The familiar, heavy blanket of paralysis, the buzzing in my ears, the growing pressure on my solar plexus. I knew the Shadow Man was there. I could feel his weight and see the general, hunched over mass of him. But this time I didn't try to struggle. I was focusing on my breathing, trying to ride the episode out, wait for the wave to pass. Then, for the first time, he stood up. The crushing weight lifted off my chest, and I gasped in a silent, desperate breath. My paralysis was still absolute, but the immediate threat of suffocation was gone. I was staring up at the ceiling, expecting to see the empty space where he had been, but the black mass was still there. It had simply risen to its full, unnatural height, a long, elongated column that scraped the ceiling. It wasn't hunched anymore. It was observing. My bedroom wall was dominated by a large, ornate vanity mirror I had bought for its antique look. It faced my bed. During all my previous episodes, I had avoided looking at it. I was terrified of what a paralyzed, screaming version of myself might look like, or worse, what the entity's reflection might be. But now, with the weight gone and the figure standing, my eyes drifted, and I saw him in the mirror. It was worse than seeing him directly. The mirror image was sharper, clearer. It had texture. The surface of the entity in the mirror was rippling, like oil on water, a constant, silent movement that betrayed a furious, inner energy. It was standing directly next to my bed, looking down on my head. But its reflection in the mirror wasn't looking at me. It was looking at itself. As I watched, paralyzed, the reflection smiled. It was a slow, deliberate, jagged stretching of the shadowy mouth, and the head in the mirror, the head of the reflection, turned its attention away from itself and began to slowly, deliberately, look directly at Mitha Realmi, lying in the bed. The figure in the room and the figure in the mirror were now separated by a fraction of a second, an echo of consciousness. The figure in the room did not move. It was a black, silent statue. But the reflection began to move its hand. It was a slow, agonizing extension. The long, bony fingers in the glass extended out and traced the curve of my face in the reflection, a caress of pure evil. I could see the image of the fingers pressing into my skin in the glass, and then, the worst part, I felt it. A searing, ice-cold pressure traced a single line from my temple down to my chin on my actual face. It was the physical equivalent of static electricity, a violent neurological shock that made my teeth ache. The entity had somehow used its reflection to touch me, circumventing the rules of the paralysis event, proving it was not a trick of the mind. This was a deliberate, sadistic interaction. The episode ended with the typical white light flash, and I was loose. I screamed and scrambled out of the room, turning on every light in the apartment. When I returned an hour later, the room was bright, sterile, and safe. I checked the mirror. Nothing. But when I ran my finger down the side of my face, from temple to chin, there was a faint, almost invisible red mark, like a thread had been pressed against my skin. It faded within an hour, but the psychological mark never did. The next time the paralysis struck, I knew the entity was not bound by the darkness. It was using my own reflections to find me, and that realization that my own image was being used as a doorway was a betrayal of my final, secure reality. I was no longer living alone. After the incidents with the mirror, I moved in with my best friend, Clara, into a large, split-level house. Her presence was supposed to be the antidote. 2 minds, 2 bodies. If I couldn't move, she could wake me. Safety in numbers. This story proves that isolation is not a prerequisite for terror. It only changes the scale of the audience. I had my worst episode in the guest room. The paralysis hit. The crushing weight was back, and I saw the figure sitting on my legs. I was fighting the familiar fear, waiting for the release. But then, I heard something that was not supposed to be part of the script. Clara's voice. She was calling my name, tentatively, from the hallway outside my closed door. "Hey, are you okay? I heard something." The entity on my legs immediately froze. Its head snapped toward the door. This was a violation of its routine. It was no longer a personal, psychological terror. It was a physical presence that could interact with the external world. The pressure on my legs vanished. The figure did not simply fade, it moved. It rose slowly. Its torso. In my paralyzed state, I could only track its silhouette as it glided across the floor toward the closed door of my room. It didn't open the door. It just stood there, a silent, waiting column of blackness. I heard Clara on the other side of the wood. She was whispering into her phone, likely texting me or someone else. And then I heard her footsteps begin to slowly walk away from my door. I thought she was leaving. Relief surged through my trapped body. Then I heard a new sound. The unmistakable, slow, mechanical click of the doorknob on the other side of the room, the hallway side turning. The figure had left my room. It was now in the hallway with Clara, or at least walking in the direction she had just gone. The paralysis broke. I thrashed off the bed, gasping, and flew to the door. I ripped it open and screamed Clara's name. The hallway was empty. The entire house was silent. Clara was in her bedroom, a few doors down, sitting up in bed, looking pale and confused. She said, "I don't know." I woke up because I heard a sound like a heavy thud from downstairs. But when I came to check on you, I heard a sound from your room. A slow, wet, dragging sound, like something was being pulled across the carpet. I thought you were hurt. I was about to knock, but then I heard your front door lock click. I swore I heard the deadbolt being thrown from the inside. The front door, which we had both left unlocked when we went to bed. The heavy, metallic, unmistakable sound of the deadbolt being thrown, securing the house. The entity had not just scared me. It had left my room, walked down the hall, and locked us both inside the house with it. We called the police. They found nothing. No forced entry, no signs of life, no footsteps. But the front door, the heavy, metallic, modern deadbolt, was locked. We knew that sound. It was an impossible act. The next night, Clara didn't sleep. She sat in the living room, listening to the impossible, heavy silence of a house that had been secured by something that should not exist. The terror had now infected the entire environment. This is the end of the line. The event that forced me to leave that house, that city, and that life. After the incident with the locked door, I knew that running was pointless. It wasn't the place. It was me. I was the target. I began reading every account, every journal entry, every mythological explanation of sleep paralysis. I found only one common thread: resistance. Even a small, silent focus on a single intention was the only escape. I decided I would no longer simply wait for the white light. I would fight. The paralysis came at the usual time, 3:17 a.m. This time, I was ready. I did not fight the paralysis. I accepted the cemento-like stillness. I felt the weight drop onto my stomach. I opened my eyes and looked directly at the shadow man, daring it to smile. I saw the yellow, dull eyes and I focused my entire mind, my entire will, on one thought. Get off. The entity reacted. It was not fear. It was amusement. It pressed down harder, forcing a rattling choke from my throat. It leaned its massive, angular head down, its face mere inches from mine, and the stench of crypt and blood was overwhelming. I felt my nose involuntarily wrinkle in disgust. In the previous episodes, the entity spoke only the grating or Rebelin name. This time, it used English. The whisper was dry, close, and felt like 1,000 tiny needles scraping my eardrum. It said one word, a command, a chilling instruction that defied all logic. Sleep. And with that one word, the entity's hand, the bony, tendrilled hand from the first story, did not grip my arm. It gently, almost tenderly, placed 2 fingers over my left eyelid. The pressure was feather-light, but it was enough. I could not resist the command. The world went black, the fear of being awake, and paralyzed was instantly replaced by the terrifying realization of being awake, paralyzed, and blind. I began to fight with a desperation I didn't know I possessed. I wasn't trying to move my body. I was fighting the forced closure of my eyelid, battling the silent command. I poured my focus into resisting the gentle pressure of those 2 cold fingers. A minute passed, an hour. Time melted. All I felt was the pressure on my chest and the 2 light, icy cold fingers resting on my eyelid. I was losing the battle. The blackness was absolute. Then, I focused on a single tear. I forced a tear, a pure, physical, liquid release of panic. From the corner of my right eye, the one that was not being held shut. The tear rolled down my temple, warm and wet, and when it hit the pillow, the entity screamed. It was not a human scream. It was a high-pitched, furious hiss of tearing metal. The weight was instantly gone, and the fingers were lifted. I gasped, opening both eyes, scrambling up. The room was empty, but my left eyelid, the one the entity had covered, was bruised. Not a deep bruise, but a faint, blue-black discoloration where the 2 fingers had rested. It looked like a child's fingerprint. It took 4 days to completely fade, a physical, visible mark left by a psychological entity. I realized then that this was not a dream. It was not a chemical reaction. I had been touched, and I had been marked. The entity had attempted to make me sleep, and I had fought back, leaving a scar. I knew then that it would never truly leave. It had claimed a piece of my reality. I fled the apartment, but every night, I still feel the phantom chill of 2 cold fingers resting on my skin. I never opened my eyes right away anymore. Listen primera. Ha? Wa? It. Because the only thing scarier than the shadow man sitting on your chest is the possibility that one day, he won't be a shadow at all. He'll be real, and you'll be asleep. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to these incredible, terrifying accounts. Every story you just heard is purported to be true, a breach in the membrane between our sleeping and waking worlds. If you have your own stories, if you've seen the shadow man, felt the weight on your chest, or heard the whisper, leave a comment below. Share your city, share your experience, and let us know. Did you fight, or did you simply wait for the light? Smash that like button to help push this video out to others who are searching for answers in the dark. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss our next deep dive into the terror that lurks just outside your closed eyelids. Until next time, try to stay awake.